how to write a medical textbook, a medical or a surgical textbook. Why write a textbook? You need a reason? Hey, think about walking into a medical store and you see a book sitting there with your name on it. Also, think, have you ever been inspired by some of the textbooks you've read? Think of Bailey and Loves. How many times have I heard people talk about the little inscription down the bottom of the page, the little stories? Think about Merck's manual. It was first published in 1899, still in print, still providing an excellent text for doctors all around, and I believe one of the best books. Also, one of my favourites is Henry's Extensile Exposures. It's a book written on a rather dull subject of anatomy, surgical approaches, but written in a poetic way. People still talk about this book, although sadly it's out of print. It's written by anatomists in Dublin and Ireland. More recently, people say in orthopedics, all the best books have been written, the books for medical students and residents. And then comes along Mark Miller with his review of orthopedics, an outstanding textbook, succinct, well written. And even the most recent edition, it's linked to a website where you can get updates. So, there's plenty of reasons why to write a textbook. In particular, it can be great for your career. At the beginning of your career, it can get you onto competitive training schemes. It can get you appointments at hospitals in the mid part of your career. And towards the latter part of your career, it can get to make you the head of a department and give you a lot of power and authority, actually, in your specialty. Now, when to write a textbook? Well, as I mentioned, at the beginning of your career, it can make a huge impact. But sadly, with all respect, you don't know a great deal at the beginning, and it can be hard to convince publishers. But we'll come back to this. In the middle part of your career, you know a lot now, and you're well established, and it's actually a good time to write a book. The end of your career, well, you may well be on top of your specialty and well known, and it's a lot easier to write it then. But you know, maybe it's actually a bit too late to start writing books then. So my recommendation to you is do it right at the beginning. When you're a resident or training, resident or registered training in your specialty. This is how you go about doing it. Each rotation you start, find out who is the person in that department who's writing the books. There's always someone. Go to them. Tell them you'd like to write a chapter or even be an assistant editor. They're always very keen to get your help, and they'll take you on their team. So that's where you get all the training. Later on, as you progress and you've got a few chapters out, or you've been the assistant editor, then you can approach the publishers to be the editor or the sole writer of your own book. Just think about it from the point of view of the publishers. They are going to invest a lot of money, time and effort into production, distribution, sales of your book. So they have to be convinced that you're the person to bring out the book. You can go to Oxford University Press website. They've got guidelines. These are very useful. But what you do is approach the publisher. Write to them, phone them, even more. Go and visit them. Impose your personality or your very impressive personality on them, and you will be able to convince them to take you on as a writer of an important book for them. Now, what are you going to write about? Well, you know, it's best to have a general book that's got a large readership. As I mentioned with Miller's, you can always come up with new ideas, better presentations, better approach to get a book out for medical students or young trainees in your specialty. You know, writing a book for the other end of the specialty, that's very hard. Anyway, these older surgeons, they think they know everything anyhow. You're not going to be able to tell them, and they won't buy your book. So go for a broad, general readership in the area of interest if you can. Okay, now how do we go about writing the book? Bob May, who's an editor of Nature, he's quoted as having said, "You never lose for being too generous." So be very generous, magnanimous towards the younger people around you or colleagues of a similar age. Invite them to join your team. Get them on board. Lady writers are first class. Male writers, especially Australian surgical male writers, they're not so confident. They lose confidence in their ability to write. And sadly, they can let you down. So go for female writers. Go for American writers. They're used to writing chapters as medical students, and they're very disciplined. Go for European. Go for East Central Asia, Southeast Asia. But try to get a youngish team on board who are keen to advance their careers. You know, writing a chapter can mean getting onto training schemes, getting these top jobs, and they know it. It gets them ahead. But you're the boss. You've got to take charge and direct the whole project. You've got to meet the deadlines. Don't let the publishers down. Have a disciplined approach, but, you know, a bit of fun. Enjoy it. You know, writing the book also keeps you ahead of your specialty because you know exactly what's going on in it. One other word of caution I'd like to say to you is, be careful getting professors involved. If they don't meet the deadline, or they write a lousy chapter, hard to criticise them without terrible repercussions. So generally be very cautious in that regard. Okay, so I think it's a great idea to write a book. Try to do it towards the beginning of your career. Try to get a core team around you, and it's not that hard to convince publishers. Who knows, it may become a bestseller and you may make good income from it, but regardless, it will certainly benefit your career. Thanks for your interest today.